The Radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show. It's Friday, February 3rd. I know for many of you it is still early in the morning, but hey, you know, maybe we've got some Europeans on board who are still in the evening. All right, God, constant asking me to talk to Destiny. Tell Destiny to talk to me. I've tried to do debates with Destiny. Anyway, let's jump in. There are lots of people I'd love to talk to and lots of people I'd love to debate, and you guys need to encourage them to have me on and to engage in debate. All right, let's see. Job reports this morning. So we talked about this, when is it, yesterday or the day before yesterday? But this economy is a weird economy. Things are happening that I don't think people expect, and people have, and it's, we keep getting mixed signals about the direction of the economy, and in spite of the fact that interest rates have been going up, in spite of the fact that you would expect at this point that companies would be struggling, laying people off, and we hear a lot of layoffs from Silicon Valley, from big tech. In spite of all that, the U.S. economy is creating large numbers of jobs, far more jobs than anybody expects. The U.S. Labor Department this morning released that non-farm payrolls increased by 517,000 last month in January, and they revised upwards the number of jobs created in December to 260,000. All of this far, far exceeds economist expectations. Economists surveyed by Bloomberg expected 188,000 jobs. So the economy produced 517, not 188. So the economy is doing, our economy right now is doing far better than economists expect. I don't know, somebody said when I talked about jobs last time that no, we're in a stealth recession, or, what kind of recession is it where 500,000 jobs are created? In addition to that, hourly wages are growing kind of at a steady clip, keeping up with inflation, or almost keeping up with inflation. It's just a very strange circumstance, and what's weird about it is partially what's weird about it is we have Biden as president. We have a regulatory regime that is clearly anti-business, and we've got all kinds of stuff coming out on antitrust. We'll do a show on that. But antitrust against Google. Now they're talking about antitrust against Amazon. All kinds of antitrust stuff. All of this stuff should be suppressing business activity. All of this regulation stuff should be suppressing business activity. We've also got the government spending a huge amount of money. We've got massive deficits. We've got central planners involved in the microprocessing industry and infrastructure, all kinds of stuff that any free market economist would say, no, this should weaken the economy. And then we've got interest rates going up, higher than they've been in a very, very long time. And yet the economy is chugging along, creating jobs. And part of this is, I return to a theme I said last time, the U.S. economy always seems to be more flexible than we expect it to be. American business seems to adapt to the changing environment in ways that we don't anticipate. You could say, imagine how many jobs would be created right now if the economy were actually free. But it also, I find it funny how many people are attributing this to, Biden and Biden administration. You should be, if you attributed the incredible, supposed incredible economic success under Trump, If you attributed that to Trump, why isn't this being attributed to Biden? Politicians and politics have a lot less power over what happens in the economy than one would expect. Now, what's interesting is the number, the fact that so many jobs were created, and the fact that nobody expected it. But what was interesting was that what's interesting on top of that is that the stock market viewed this as a negative. That is, the U.S. economy doing well is perceived by the stock market as a negative. Why? Stocks are down right now. And indeed, long-term bonds are up. So the yield on long-term bonds are up. Why is that? Well, the reason for that is that if the economy is chugging along, if people are being hired, if there's more, if wages are going up, then the conventional wisdom is, the conventional theory of economics is, that is all inflationary. That provides inflationary pressures. That ultimately means that the Federal Reserve has to jack up interest rates even further. And that is, a negative signal for asset prices. Asset prices, again, we talked about this before, as interest rates go up, asset prices come down. So Bitcoin is down today, NASDAQ is down today, the S&P 500 is down today, or at least was earlier. And bond prices are down today, right? So because yields are going up. So as interest rates go up, prices come down. You'd expect almost any income-producing asset, really almost any asset, to come down during a rising interest rate environment. The very positive, very robust jobs report suggests higher interest rates, suggests lower asset prices. That's why the stock market is going down. Anyway, it is super interesting to see how well the economy is doing about everything. Those of you, by the way, who asked questions last night, questions for Gina Gorlin, I'm going to invite her back at some point, and I've saved those questions, and we can use those questions again when she's back. I can look over those questions and see if there are any questions I can answer, but I think most of those questions were for her. So, asking them to me, I don't think really helps that much. All right, let's see. Yes, the Chinese balloon. The Chinese balloon. What a story this is, right? So it turns out that some civilians, originally people in an airplane and then people, I guess, from the ground with binoculars or whatever, noticed a balloon flying very high above Montana, 70,000 feet above Montana. So this is significantly higher than airplanes fly. A balloon, and the U.S. Air Force has sent F-22s to investigate and other airplanes to investigate this balloon. And they have decided that this is a spy balloon. This is a balloon that's Chinese. It's certainly Chinese. There's no question about that. But that it's a spy balloon that has beneath the balloon carrying with it all kinds of, intelligence gathering technology. And it's in Montana. Montana, by the way, has fields of strategic U.S. ballistic missiles. Now, there was a question about why would the Chinese use a balloon to try to get intelligence on Montana? They have 230 spy satellites that are pretty sophisticated. Well, it turns out that maybe balloons, they're pretty cheap. They're pretty effective ways of gathering intelligence. But this whole story raises so many different issues. The other issue is Biden wanted to have it shot down, supposedly, and the Defense Department said, no, we shouldn't shoot it down because we don't know where the debris will fall, and that could create, it might fall on Billings, Montana, and people might get killed or something. I don't know. This is Montana, after all. Not exactly the most populous place on planet Earth. So why aren't they shooting it down? And we'll get to what the Chinese are saying in a minute. But the whole story is just bizarre, right? are the Chinese stupid? Do they not know that a balloon will be seen and identified? They're doing it this just before the Secretary of State of the United States is supposed to come on a visit China. What intelligence are they going to gather now that it's not being shut down? Can they gather any intelligence? Is the U.S. doing something to undermine their capacity? I assume so. I assume there's some kind of thing that we can do to block its ability to gain at least electronic intelligence. But if it has cameras on board, are we stopping that? Do we not care if it's gathering intelligence? So we're not going to shoot it down? Is there anything else that can be done? I mean, the whole thing is just bizarre. And again, they have 230 satellites. Is the incremental intelligence they're going to gather worth the brouhaha? Now, Blinken was supposed to travel to China next week, has canceled, or not canceled, of course, postponed his trip. I mean, I don't think he would ever cancel his trip. Postponed his trip. So he'll go to China a few weeks later. Big deal. Who cares? And China is saying, oh, don't panic, guys. This isn't an intelligent balloon. It's just a weather balloon that is blown off course. It's just an experimental weather balloon that's blown off course. Really? Maybe. It actually, of all the explanations for this balloon, a weather balloon that's blown off course makes the most sense because it's the stupidest, and this whole thing is stupid. So it's pretty bizarre. It's 70,000 feet is 23,000 yards. That's far. It's way up there. The U.S. could shoot it down easily. It's choosing not to. I don't know. I don't get it. I don't. It seems cowardly not to shoot it down. It seems, but the whole thing is ridiculous. Maybe it is a weather balloon that's blown, of course. Blinken is not going to China. I'm sure the Chinese are quivering, worried. They are panicking over the fact that Blinken is not coming to visit them. Right. All right. That's the Chinese balloon. We'll monitor that story and see what happens. It's truly bizarre. All right. Let's see. So I don't know how many of you are following this story, but it is a kind of a fascinating story. This is the story about Adani and the Adani Group, the Adani Enterprises, and Adani. There's about 10 companies that carry the Adani name are owned generally by Adani. The chairperson, Gautam Adani, is one of the richest people on planet Earth, or at least was a week ago. He is the chairman of this conglomerate of stocks that are out there. He is Indian, by the way. So this is a series of Indian companies, and it is a few days ago, a report issued by a U.S. fund that is a specialist in shorting stocks. And we've talked in the past about shorting stocks, but you short a stock by borrowing the stock from somebody who owns it and then selling it, right? So you've sold it, and then when you return the stock to its owner, you buy it in the marketplace, and then you return it to the owner. So you make money when the stock price goes down, because then you buy it at a cheaper price than you sold it at, and you make money. You can't make more than 100% on a short. So a stock can go down to zero, but not any more than zero. If it goes down to zero, you've made everything that you sold the stock for. It's all a profit. So shorting is capped in terms of its upside. You can only make 100% on your short. Anyway, a group called Hindenburg, which is a hedge fund that has shorted the companies of the Adani Group. They put out a report accusing the conglomerate of brazen stock manipulation, accounting fraud schemes over the course of decades. Hindenburg this is what they do. What they do is they research companies out there. They find companies that they suspect of fraudulent behavior, or they suspect of just manipulation. They suspect something shady is going on. They do deep research into that behavior. They come to a conclusion. If they conclude that the behavior is really there, they short the stock. Then they issue a report. If the market believes their report, the stock price will come down. They will then buy the stock at the lower price and make a profit. That's how they make money. Now, short sellers are generally hated, despised by many in the marketplace. If you remember, in January 2021, there was a whole meme stock to destroy short sellers. We hate short sellers. We're going to destroy short sellers. A lot of libertarian types joined in to the hate parade over the short selling. Anyway, oops, what did I do? All right. So anyway, these guys, the Adani Group is now being called. No, I'm sorry. The Hindenburg is being called by the Adani Group the Madoffs of Manhattan. This report is considered nothing but lies. By the way, the report that the Hindenburg research group put out is 413 pages long. It is well researched. Anyway, since the report came out, that any group of companies have basically lost $110 billion. $110 billion just this week. On average, their stock prices have come down 60%. And of course, that means that Hindenburg has potentially made 60% on their investment. This is a massive story, and a lot of people are exposed to this. The Vanguard Group holds shares in the Adani Enterprise. BlackRock owns shares in Adani Enterprises. Dimensional owns some shares, although a small amount. There also, life insurance company of India has taken a massive hit over this, but the biggest losers here are basically the Adani family. But this has hit the Indian Parliament, the Indian government. This is creating a lot of people who are very upset. A lot of Indians who thought they were relatively well off, turns out, are not as well off, and particularly the Adani family are now. My guess is they're still billionaires. They're just not gazillionaires anymore. All right. Yeah, Hindenburg. I mean, look, the negative stories about anybody who short stocks. So I don't really trust all the stories about people who short stocks. I consider people who short stocks heroes. They're heroes because they are contrarians. They're heroes because they have a lot more to lose than to gain, right? Because you can only make 100%, but you could lose thousands of percent. It's happened to me. I've lost much more than my initial investment in a short position. So I know exactly how shorts work and how much money you can lose. They're heroes because they are putting their money where their mouth is. They're putting their reputation, their money, their position where their mouth is, and they are essential. Essential. It's essential for markets being efficient, markets reflecting properly prices. People get very hyped up on the way up. It's important to have players who are willing to short stocks and willing to help stock prices correct and adjust to new information on the way down. And short sellers are very good at that. So I think short sellers are crucial and important, and their demonization is a massive injustice. And not to say that every short seller is an honest player, not to say that every short seller is in the right. Often they're in the wrong. That's part of the issue. That's when they lose money. They lose money when they're in the wrong. And just for full disclosure, the fund, my fund, both has long positions and short positions. We don't specialize in shorting, but we also short. Yeah. I think I think Hindenburg are the good guys, and the markets would be a lot poorer in terms of their quality, in terms of the information, in terms of their economic value, without shorts. I do not have any positions in the Adani, although some of my, some of the mutual funds that my 401k might have, but I certainly do not have a position in Adani. I wish I had gone short. Yeah, that would be cool. Let's see. Yeah, this is again a story to watch. We'll see. I suspect Hindenburg is absolutely right, and there's a lot of fraud in their Adani positions, and they will suffer the consequences. All right, just a quick story about. Let me just see. Where is this? Just a quick story about that I saw that I thought was pretty entertaining, if you will. So there is law. I know this is true of California. This is true probably in most states. There is law that basically says that a company must pay its employees at least time and a half on overtime. So the government, in its wisdom, has defined the work week as X number of hours a week, and I think every state defines it a little differently and how they measure that. But then if you work more than that, the government has determined that your employer must pay you overtime, and that overtime pay must be at least 1.5 times your regular pay. Now, of course, as you can imagine, this is the kind of government intervention in the labor markets that I'm opposed to. Absolutely, completely, thoroughly. There should be no government intervention in the negotiated contract between an employee and employer in terms of pay, overtime, or anything like that. However, this is the reality. This is what exists, and that's what we report here on the Iran Book News show, News Roundup. So now there is an exception to this, and you guys probably know this because you guys are probably managers. If you're a manager, you do not get overtime pay. So managers do not get overtime pay, and that's true in California. That's true in, I think, almost every state. So that this is a law that is only there to help non-managerial positions make sure that they get the overtime pay. Now, what do you think? What incentive does that create for? Oh, this is managers, right? Now, this assumes that everybody is salaried, right? We're not talking about contractors. We're talking about salaried. Salaried managers do not need to get overtime pay. I know this because this was true at the Ayn Rand Institute when I ran it. At least that was California law. So, Jennifer saying this is discrimination. Absolutely. But it's discriminating against the people who make more money, so it's okay. If you have more education, if you have more money, if you have more skill, if you have more ability, or if you have just a better name for your position like manager versus just plain employee, we don't care about discrimination. We only care about discriminating on people down, below, right? So what do you think? What do you think businesses do? Well, what businesses do, what businesses do is they recategorize jobs to be manager jobs. They come up with new titles. I don't know. You might be a front desk clerk, and they recategorize your job as director of first impressions, and you categorize as a manager, and therefore you don't get overtime. Or a barber could be a grooming manager. And now this sounds funny and sounds ridiculous, but the fact is that there's a white paper coming out that shows that firms, companies around the country, are saving $4 billion in overtime payments a year simply by getting creative with titles. Now, it's not that simple, because I remember if we wanted to categorize somebody as a manager, at least in California, we had to not just give him the right title. You have to pay him a manager's wage, but you also then have to say, what is it? I mean, the bureaucracy is unbelievable. These inflated titles result in 13% less pay than they might otherwise get. Maybe it's not clear to me, because if they get a raise associated with the title, maybe that's only half of what they would get over time. Did the study take that into account? Anyway, I thought this was funny. The bureaucrats, the regulators intervene. They step in. They try to make our lives as business owners as complicated and difficult as possible. And then businesses hire or spend huge amounts of wasteful time trying to figure out how to get around the regulations and how to circumvent them and come up with creative titles for the employees so they don't have to pay them overtime. And that is a reality. That is exactly what happens out there. It's insane, but it's how the world works and how the world must work. If you intervene, if you interfere, we're going to find a way to get rid of that interference and that intervention. Now, in California, you could get fined enormous amounts of money if the state discovered that you're doing title inflation in order to get around the overtime laws, and you can get in real trouble. So this is not a minor issue in the state of California. All right, what did I see something here related to that? No, it's not true that only hourly positions get overtime. If you're not a manager, you get overtime. Now, there is an exclusion in California for tech workers. So tech workers in Silicon Valley don't get overtime. And the reason they don't get overtime is because Silicon Valley lobbied for those positions. So there are exclusions to these things, but it is not about, because I went through employment lawyers when I was running AOI around all this stuff. So Jeremy, as I know, is a tech worker. That's why he does not get. So one of the categories that was excluded because Silicon Valley firms lobbied hard in Sacramento to exclude them is anybody in tech. So tech workers do not get overtime. But it is an issue of your categorization as manager or not, with lots of exceptions. Again, this is government regulations. Government regulations always have loopholes, exceptions. Firms lobby, all of that nonsense. All right, finally, egg inflation. You probably all noticed, this has been a story for a while, that prices of eggs have gone through the roof over the last few weeks in 2022. Egg prices kind of went from about $1.25 or maybe $1.50 to $4.25, $4.50. This is monthly average egg prices. These are the cheap eggs. We're not talking about, the omega-3, free range, vegan chickens or whatever. We're talking about normal eggs. $4.25. I know here in Puerto Rico, it's a lot more expensive than that, but that's because we're in Puerto Rico and we have a Jones Act and all of that, all the other limitations. Anyway, prices just shot up, far exceeding normal inflation, far exceeding the price increases of other products. And the question, of course, is what the hell happened to egg prices? What is the cause? And there was a really good coverage of this of all places this morning. And I know you're going to freak out when I tell you where the coverage is, but it's in the New York Times. The New York Times is asking, why did egg prices go so high? And as soon as I saw this, I thought, okay, they're going to take the Elizabeth Warren tact and they're going to blame, I don't know, they're going to blame manufacturers, they're going to blame price gouging, they're going to blame monopolies, they're going to blame business, they're going to blame maybe even the chickens. I don't know. They're going to blame somebody. It's all price gouging. It's all of that. And it turns out that this is actually a really good article that doesn't blame any of those things and actually presents facts around what is causing prices of eggs to go up. And there are basically two reasons. One is that price of grain is going up a lot. That is chicken feed. The stuff, the people who produce eggs, I don't know what you call those, farmers? Is that farming? Is that ranch? I don't know what it is. Anyway, the people who produce eggs Well, it's the chickens that produce eggs, and you have to feed the chickens. And chicken feed has gone up quite a bit. So over, particularly late last year, the price of oats, corn, and barley has gone up, partially because of just straight inflation, partially because of the war in Ukraine and restrictions in supply of some of these grains. But prices of the stuff that we feed our chickens has gone up, and it's been going up for quite a while. So that is one reason. But the second reason, and maybe the more important reason, is the avian flu that struck chickens in 2022, primarily in early 2022, but that has had an impact on egg prices over time. But also in the after the summer, in September, October, November, December, there's been a significant increase in the number of hens dying of avian flu, and therefore in just the number of chickens available to produce the eggs. So you get higher prices for the inputs to get the eggs to lay the chickens, and you've getting fewer and fewer chickens. And what's interesting is the New York Times even includes this. What's interesting is at the same time you get very sticky egg demand. So usually when prices go up, demand for something goes down. But Americans are really committed to their eggs, and on average, Americans eat more than slightly less than an egg a day. So Americans consume a lot of eggs, and they're committed to consuming a lot of eggs. And therefore, in spite of the fact that prices go up, people are still buying eggs. We call that sticky egg demand. Egg demand, the demand for eggs does not change quickly as prices do. So in spite of the fact that prices are going up, right, the demand for eggs is not going down. And as a consequence, we get shortages of eggs. There are not enough eggs on the thing, and prices keep going up to try to get to the point where it drives you guys to buy fewer eggs. Because only when you buy fewer eggs will the egg shortage go away, because raising more chickens takes time. The supply is also sticky. That is, the supply does it. You can't ramp up egg production on a dime. So these are the kind of issues. It's the fact that you can't ramp up egg production, the fact that demand for eggs is sticky. It doesn't go down as fast as prices go up, the fact that there's avian flu out there that has killed a lot of chickens, and the fact that chicken feed prices have gone up. Those are the reasons. You heard it here on the Yaron Brook Show, but those are the reasons for egg prices being as high as they are, and why they went up late last year. And sometimes the New York Times actually reports the facts and reports what's really going on, and I think in this case it is right on the money. All right, Marilyn, thank you for the support. Jeremy, thank you, really appreciate it. And Vladimir, thank you all you guys. But saying that, we're way behind on where we need to be in order to get to our 250 regular goal. Also, we only have one Super Chat question, so if you want to ask a question, you better do it quickly, because once I read this, I think this is going to be a quick question to answer. Once I answer this question, the show's over. So if you have additional questions, jump in. We do have, Adam writes, have you seen Mr. Beast's latest video in which he paid for an eye surgery for 1,000 people? It's a great video on charity that I can get behind. I have not seen it. I'll look it up. Armin, thank you. He says he really enjoyed the interview last night. I'm looking forward to setting a time to talk, but really appreciate it. Armin just put us over the $250 threshold. So thank you, Armin, as he has done often in the last few weeks. He gets us to where the show needs to be. Let's see. Ian asked, and this is the only Super Chat question I have, so if you want to ask, now's the time. Matt Levine's money stuff had an interesting piece about the SEC coming after banks for using WhatsApp for work discussions, and they might come after hedge funds next. Seems like typical regulation expansion. Thoughts? Yeah, I actually talked about this on one of my shows. I can't remember which one, but I did talk about this. This is a big deal, and it's a big deal, and it's something that I need to be really, really careful of. It's not just WhatsApp. It's just chat generally. So so the regulations for banks and for hedge funds and for financial institutions are that all communications between employees and between customers and employees and clients and employees and suppliers and employees must be done on employer-approved media where the employer is capturing everything that you say. So, for example, we communicate basically for work by two means: email, and we have a particular software service that captures every email and stores and archives it. I can't remember if it's for 3 to 5 years, for 5 years, so that if the SEC ever wanted to investigate us, they would have access to all our emails for 5 years. And you're literally not, even if I delete an email in my account, it doesn't delete it from the archives. The archives keep those emails for all that period of time. And in terms of chat, we communicate by Teams. Microsoft, again, does the same thing. Microsoft owns Teams. Microsoft does the same thing. Everything we do on Teams, every chat, every discussion, everything that we do on Teams, I guess, except video and audio communications, I don't think those are saved, but everything else is saved in somewhere and is archived for the future. If I message one of my coworkers on just a messenger on Apple or on WhatsApp or on anything, Telegraph or just regular messenger, that is literally a violation of the regulation. That is literally illegal. On a work-related issue, I can message them about dinner. I can message them about personal stuff. But if I message them about work-related stuff on any platform other than the two where it's being archived, that is illegal. And the big banks in the United States have been fined hundreds of millions of dollars because it was discovered that their employees were using Messenger and WhatsApp to communicate between one another. And I talked about this on a show a while back. It's just, this is a real police state when it comes to business, particularly in finance. It's a real police state. Everything you do is monitorable. You have to structure your life in a way that the government can monitor what you do. You have to structure everything you do. Literally, I have to think about who I'm messaging whom about what, with what platform, and how I do it. As it is, I have too many messaging apps, and I can't remember, who I use, what messaging app with what. It's just ridiculous, and it's only finance. It's only financial entities, and this is the kind of big brother. But this is why I often say, finance, particularly banks, they're just government. They're just government, entities with a pretense of private property. It's just horrible. Just horrible. Anyway. But this is what happens, right? Once government, and it starts with banks, but once government guarantees bank deposit insurance, then it has to make sure that banks behave safely. In order to make sure that banks behave safely, it has to monitor what they do. In order to monitor what they do, they have to know what everybody says in the bank. And in order to know what everybody says in the bank, that they're not doing something questionable, they have to capture all the emails. And in order to do that, they have to mandate that the firm does that, so they can. It just goes on and on and on and on. And now, even though the government does not backstop hedge funds, and even though in a hedge fund, the only investors I can take in a hedge fund are people who have investable securities of more than $5 million. So almost all my investors are institutional or very high net worth individuals, all sophisticated, or if they're not sophisticated, can hire sophisticated people to decide to help them make the investment. Why is the government down my throat? I mean, all my investors are sophisticated. They should be monitoring me. Why is the government monitoring me? Who is the government protecting here? My investors? But my investors are smarter than the regulators. So this is all about control. I do not have, mom and pop investors. I do not have. I mean, even if you wanted to, I can't take your money. I can't even market to you. I can't tell you about it. Unless you have $5 million of investable securities, which a lot of people don't have. Very few people have. Not just $5 million of assets, of securities. For a long time, I don't know if I still can, I couldn't invest in my own fund. Right? Now, they give exceptions for you, for the managers of the fund, but that's how ridiculous this is. But why do these people need this kind of level of interference and this kind of level of inspection? Who is the government trying to protect? They're not trying to protect anybody. All it is about is control. James asked, following on my other question, I have one about internships. How do you get interns in minority high schools or communities? How do you get interns in minority high schools or community colleges when officials do not want to assist you in providing opportunities? I mean, it's very difficult, and internships generally are now frowned upon because internships don't pay any money, and that's a violation of minimum wage laws. So there is a huge movement to ban internships. Internships are something that middle-class kids get and poor kids typically don't get, because middle-class kids are and wealthy kids have parents who are connected, and they're willing to do it for free. Why? Because they learn a skill and they get connections themselves. It's a great opportunity. But internship to poor kids, that's considered exploitation, and therefore it's discouraged. Another way in which the government is supposedly trying to help people out. Okay, there's a question I didn't answer supposedly. What are the least racist countries you visited? Do you put UK or other European countries on that list? Do you see any Asian countries on that list? I really don't know. I mean, I don't know. Europe is, I think, quite racist. Not that I necessarily even encountered it, but I've read about, I mean, the way they treat their football players, who many of the football players in European teams now are black, and the way they treat them, the catcalls is horrific. There's lots of evidence of racism in France and other places against black immigrants. The whole attitude towards immigrants is clearly race-based. You could say it's all culture, but there's certainly racial aspect to it. There's certainly racism in the UK, although I think generally the UK is one of the better countries. Today, it's so diverse. The UK is so diverse that it's hard to be racist in the UK. But certainly some of the taxi drivers that I've had have been racist and expressed racist concern. I just think it's prevalent all over the world. Asia, the Japanese are certainly very racist. They view anybody who's not Japanese, they look down upon, they frown upon. There's certainly a kind of a xenophobic, but even a racist attitude, with the Japanese. I don't know about the Koreans. I don't get that sense, partially because they were oppressed by the Japanese. Maybe they don't have quite that same sense of superiority. And I don't get that sense about the Chinese. I don't think the Chinese are very racist, although I don't know. There's a fairly large black community in Guangzhou. It would be interesting to ask whether they, to the extent to which they experience racism in Guangzhou because of the color of their skin. I don't know. I don't know about the rest of Asia. I suspect, in Thailand, I've heard stories that even within Thailand, people with lighter skin among the Thai themselves, people from the north who tend to have darker skin, are discriminated against relative to the people from the south who have lighter skin, or people who have lighter skin in Thailand might have some. They might be partially Chinese. They might have Chinese genes that make their skin lighter. In the South, the Chinese, quite prevalent. People in the North tend to be more dark. And even within the country, I hear, and then you've got India with a caste system. Talk about racism, a form of racism. The caste system is one of the worst of all. So, racism is prevalent pretty much everywhere. The United States is not unique in this. I think it's a remnant of tribalism. When the other was the other tribe, there was a threat to you. You hated the other tribe. Over time, the other tribe might even look different than you. Certainly, as people moved around, and it always increases as we descend into more and more collectivism and tribalism. And the cure for it is individualism, but that's rare. That is rare. All right, last question. Ginger asks, where does all the money the feds get in unregulated fines go? Love to follow that. Well, it goes to the Treasury. It goes to fund some of the regulatory agencies' actual budget, but it basically goes to the government. It doesn't go to compensate any quote victims because there aren't any. There aren't any. So it goes basically to the Treasury. All right, everybody. Thank you again, Amin. Thanks to all the other super chatters. Thank you all for being here this morning. And there will be a show tomorrow at 2 p.m. East Coast time. Not sure what the topic is going to be, but there will be a show tomorrow. I do owe some, I think I owe some, at least 2 movie reviews and a TV show review. So I hope to make a dent in that. I probably won't cover them all because there's one movie you haven't seen yet, but I hope to make a dent in that tomorrow. All right, but we'll have a topic. Nothing tonight. Nothing tonight. Can't have something every morning and every night that I'm not quite there yet. But thanks, everybody, and I will see you all tomorrow. Bye. Have a fantastic rest of your Friday and have a phenomenal